I'm Tom Irons. I'm a physician here in Greenville, a longtime member of the faculty of East Carolina University, and was born and raised in this town. I'm pleased to have with me today Calvin Mercer, a candidate for the at-large seat of the City Council of Greenville. Calvin, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning. I appreciate your taking the time to do this. I appreciate all your work over at the medical school for people who struggle for good health and health care, and particularly for our kids. I've heard you speak twice, I think, recently, very eloquently and passionately about the importance of getting love and nurture and support to our kids before age 5 and how important that is. And I really appreciate your work in that. So I am moved. I really am moved and inspired by your commitment.
Calvin, I'm a very lucky man. I get to do what I love, and it is a great privilege for me to be able to do what I can for the children and the good people of Pitt County. So thank you.
You're most welcome, Tom.
Calvin, tell us a little about yourself and your background.
Okay, I grew up on a farm in Duplin County, about an hour south of here, a little town, Beulahville. Most people know that as they're going to the beach, I think. And who I am, in large part, is, I think, a result of my family culture and what I learned from my parents, particularly my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. My family in Duplin County, my extended family, were for the most part small business owners, pizza, restaurant, convenience store. Now, in the old days, they were called country stores.
Country stores. There was no such thing as a convenience store, as far as I know.
My uncle ran a country store right next to our house. Cabinet shop, book and gift shop, real estate office, and so on.
Yeah.
So they were, small business people, and from all of them, and especially my mom and my dad, I learned, I think, the core values that have stuck with me of hard work, taking calculated risk, fiscal conservatism. I got that from my dad. Civic involvement. They were very involved in their community. Honesty. My father operated a good-sized farm, and I grew up working with tobacco and corn, soybeans, and livestock. My first visit to Greenville ever as a little kid was selling tobacco with my dad down in the area where we're now want to revitalize the warehouse district.
Calvin, I grew up in that district. My first years of my life was spent there, and I can still remember the really wonderful smell of the cured tobacco as it came through town on the trucks.
Those days, I'll never forget those days, and it's very interesting now to come back and be on the city council and be involved in trying to revitalize that area.
It is.
But I learned a lot from my dad, about running an efficient operation of fiscal conservatism. I mean, if he drilled into my sister and my brother and I once, he did it 1,000 times, what he would call the value of a dollar. And my mom, now retired, she's still living, ran a small business in Beulahville, and through the years, including my college years and beyond, I would assist her part-time in that business, and I saw through her the challenges and the risk and the satisfactions of a small business owner. Both my parents were very active in church. My father was on the local school advisory board. He was also an elected official as a soil and water conservation supervisor. And so this is where I got a lot of my core values and my sense, I think, of, you got to give back to your community. It's very important.
And you remain very active in your church.
I do.
As well as in the community.
I'm a member of a downtown St. Paul's church,
yeah.
and am very active with my wife. She's my boss on Sunday afternoons. Every Sunday afternoon, she is the youth leader of our church, and so I'm her boss as I assist her with the youth.
She's your boss as you assist her with the youth. Come on.
She's my boss. Freud and slip.
Okay, well, Calvin, lots of people seem to see several of the races in this election as pivotal for our city. It's no secret that things have been contentious on our council over the last year or two, and at least for me, it's been a little hard to even watch, to see not much progress being made in the face of the kinds of conflict and that sort of thing that has arisen. What are your thoughts about this year's election?
Well, Tom, I think many people are disillusioned with their government at a lot of levels, not just one level. All over this great country, people want good government, and I think they yearn for that, but they see it as a fleeting dream, as something that's maybe not possible, but they really yearn, I think, for at all levels of our government, for principled elected officials who work for the common good. And I've given talks to young people who have interest in public service, and my central advice to these young people is be clear about who you are, be clear about your core values as a human being, and then translate those core values into principles that you explain to the voters, and then take votes consistent with that. And we all, as voters, deserve that. And I tell young people also, do not ever, for any reason, for anyone, compromise your integrity. Honor your word. You owe yourself that, and you owe the people that put you in office that. And so when citizens go to the ballot box, they will, in my view, have some good choices in every race, and that's what democracy is all about, is choices. And I do think, as you said, people are concerned about the city council. It is important to know the candidates and their backgrounds and their records, and I trust that people will educate themselves. The campaigns are on. Slick mailers are going to show up in the mailboxes, and TV and newspaper ads are going to start. And at every level of government, it's important for citizens to sift through all this and really know who the candidates are, who's funding them, what they stand for. I'm very pleased that most of my support, the campaign reports will show this, most of my support comes from people all over this city, small and large businesses, white collar, blue collar, retired ethnic groups, and that helps you get elected, but it also is very, very important when you're serving, because big, important projects need wide buy-in. And so if you've got wide buy-in, I think that can be very helpful, not only to get elected, but when you're serving.
Calvin, as I've observed the business of the council, or read about the business of the council, I can hardly stand to watch it these days, but to read about the business of the council, it seems that you've emerged as someone who takes very seriously, has a strong interest in fiscal responsibility. I've made no secret about my concern about the city budget. I really am concerned about the city budget and about this council spending down our margin of error on our fund balances. The city manager told us that we were possibly setting ourselves up for tax increases or reduction in services or layoff of staff or something to make ends meet. Now, whoever is on the council after November will need to have their wits about them when they sit down to try to straighten out this budget. And there are a lot of concerns here about unnecessary and expensive studies that maybe cost more than they should, the high number and costly executive turnovers, and a well-known and respected speaker in one of our recent council meetings at the public comment period urged us to revisit last year's staff recommendation that we raise $200,000 annually in fees on the gaming sweepstakes businesses in town. She said we should put this money each year in economic development. The mayor spoke against increasing these fees. My opponent spoke against them. Maybe we wouldn't raise quite that much, but even if we raised $100,000 a year, I think that could go to very needed projects around the city. I see Eddie Smith at Grady White as a supporter, and that he sponsored a reception, business people and other leaders for you.
Eddie, yeah, as you said, is the owner of Grady White's. He's a savvy and widely respected businessman who has given, he and his family has given a lot to this community.
Oh, goodness, have they? Yeah.
Yes.
One of the most generous people I've ever known.
Very generous.
He and Joe have been great citizens of this community.
They really have. They've stepped up, and to have his support and his invaluable advice through the years is just, I can't calculate that really. And in September, as he has in the past 2 campaigns,
right.
He, along with 55 other named supporters on the formal invitation, did a very nice event for me. This time we did it at Rock Springs. And 2 years ago at Brook Valley, 132 business and other civic community leaders came out in support. This year we had well over, we had about, I think, 190 RSVPs. And I don't take this necessarily as support for me as much as I interpret this as growing numbers of citizens and business leaders and community leaders. They want quality growth and programming in our city. That's the way I interpret this.
Calvin, let's move to another subject here.
Okay.
We might. There's been a lot of interest, and I've heard a lot of talk and sometimes very emotional conversation and back and forth in the newspaper and other places in the change in the 3 unrelated rule. What are your thoughts about that? And please explain what 3 unrelated rule means for those who do not know.
Now, the 3 unrelated means that no more than 3 unrelated people can live in one residence. And basically, this policy has served helping to keep a healthy balance and a healthy mix of renters and homeowners in a neighborhood.
To prevent the neighborhood from
That's right.
converting from a mix to a strictly rental neighborhood.
Yeah, we want that healthy mix. When it tips over into a certain percentage, then the neighborhood is threatened, and that's going to, my concern is that a threatened neighborhood, we have to come back some future council down the road and have people float some big bond issue to save a neighborhood. We don't want that. We want to have policies in place that keep that balance. But this has been, I would say, a very unpopular, I think potentially destructive policy for our neighborhoods. Now the Mayor, Thomas, said that this might be a model that someday might make sense for other areas of our city. I don't think that's what our neighborhoods want. I don't think it's good for quality of life in our neighborhoods. I don't think ultimately it's good for the business and economic development because what we want is a city that attracts people here and attracts businesses here and can keep the staff here because of the quality of life. And I would say, other than the last minute pay raise that this council voted for themselves, this has been the one issue that has upset people the most in the past 2 years. And I think this election could very well determine the future of that policy and whether or not it's enacted in other parts of the city.
Thanks, Calvin. Summarize for me, if you can, what you've helped to accomplish since you've been on the council. Hit the highlights for us.
Well, every citizen appreciates my opponent's support of economic development and this council's support of economic, the emphasis that's been given to that. Every citizen appreciates that because we need jobs and we want economic development. But some have tried to paint a picture that Greenville was stagnant on the economic development front until the recent council. Now, we've had good mayors and good council people for years in the past who have done many good things for our city. And so it's a continuation, not a beginning. We've had economic development for a long time, and we want to continue that, and I appreciate the continuation of that in partnership with so many people. I'm most willing to run on my record. I've long been a supporter of economic development and always will be. You asked me to hit some of the highlights. I'm going to give you some specifics. I think the public needs to know that. Since joining the council in 2007, I have worked on or supported numerous major projects, and many of these are in the urban core of our city. I'll just list some of them. Nathaniel Village, 2010, an award-winning $5.5 million project.
Really has brought a very nice dimension to
absolutely.
the uptown area.
If folks could go there, it's really a wonderful facility. I was so proud when we did the groundbreaking for that, the ribbon cutting. The Province, a $30 to $40 million project completed in 2011. First Street Place, a $14 million residential complex, 2009. The Drew Steele Center, which was funded in large part with private donations and state grants, 2012. Georgetown is the current $42 million project by Tom Taft and Jim Ward, almost a decade in the making, not something that happened overnight. Small business grants. I'm very proud of our putting this in place many years ago. This is an award-winning job creator small business startup program since 2008. Has helped the two examples are the Gold Post in West Greenville, the Scullery downtown. Go Science Center, many years in the making. 10th Street Connector is a complicated, massive project that involves uniting the hospital, the university, and the city. We've worked on that on many years, and it's ahead of schedule. It will be a boon to economic development, uptown revitalization.
I'm glad, because I didn't know if I was going to live long enough to actually drive on it.
Right. These projects, and that's a good comment, Tom, because these projects, they don't happen overnight, and they take many partnerships and many years to pull off. The relocation of the train switching station is another one.
Thank the Lord. I probably wouldn't have been able to make it here for this interview if you hadn't done it. I'd have been in some sort of line of traffic.
And you want to take on a big project, take on one with the railroad. It took years to get that done. 5 Points Plaza, where we have free boot and farmers market. Now, some of the other projects that I am taking a lead on, and I'll continue to work on if I'm on the council, the certified retirement community, I have pushed for fast tracking this certification so that we can tap into the resources of the North Carolina Department of Commerce. And fast tracking this was rejected by a majority of the council and my opponent. Minor league baseball, it will take some time to figure out if this is a feasible project or not. And a third one is utilizing the river. Relatively inexpensive improvements to the river can give citizens much more opportunity to enjoy our river and bring more people uptown and promote economic development. We should certainly.
People want to be near water. People want to be near water. They always do, don't they,
yes.
Calvin? Yeah. So you certainly have been a good and effective supporter of our uptown area. Having grown up, our first house was on the corner of 8th and Evans Street.
I didn't
Calvin, know that. And having loved that area, which of course we called downtown, not uptown in those days, I have a strong nostalgic feeling for those 53 Chevys parked along the street and that sort of thing. But we've been through a time when we just wouldn't even want to be there, and it's nice to watch it coming back.
Yeah. I want an uptown that invites us to stroll through at night and have dinner, a place that we enjoy bringing our out-of-town guests. And we have accomplished a lot through the years, and there's still much more. We need more residential down there. We need more restaurants, more stores. My guiding philosophy for downtown has always been I want a center city that is fun for people of all ages to visit, safe to go at all times, day and night, and profitable for all business. That's
if it's not fun and it's not safe, it will not be profitable.
That's right.
It will not
That's
be profitable.
Exactly right.
Yeah. You've been a strong proponent of sound urban planning. Tell us a little more about smart growth or quality growth. What does that mean? How can it bring jobs? How can it improve our quality of life?
Well, we want to grow our city. We all want to grow our city. But I want to make sure that we grow in a way that alleviates rather than worsens the traffic situation. I want to make sure we grow so that neighborhoods have adequate open space, and that's a healthy city that is attractive to business and retirees and visitors. And as you know, I was raised on a family farm. I mentioned that earlier. And sprawl gobbles up farmland while gutting our downtown. And sprawl moves the city limit farther and farther from the city center. I mean, some may remember when Greenville Boulevard was our limit, our southern limit. Now it's Fire Tower Road.
I certainly do remember.
well, Tom, if we keep living, what might be happen before long, we can arrive in Greenville after 15 minutes driving from New Bern. Now, that's not necessarily good, and I could name some really special cities about our size that people love to visit, and these cities didn't just happen. They were planned, and the leadership stuck to their guns, and guess what? The developers worked with the city to make this vision a reality, and they made lots of money. And so I think that we can have a planned city that is good for both business and neighborhoods.
Calvin, how does West Greenville revitalization fit? You know, this is an area about which I'm passionate and in which I've been involved for a long time. How does this fit into your vision?
All of our citizens, through the bond issue, for one, and maybe other ways, have invested in this area of our city. And we see important results. Lucille Gorham Intergenerational Center, police substations, PAL programs for kids, and other things. If I have anything to do with it, we will continue these efforts. We will continue to give focus to this. Here are just a few things that I've supported in years past. I've already talked about Nathaniel Village, which you commented on. The West 5th Street Gateway project.
That's beautiful.
Everyone I've talked to, it's just been a wonderful project.
It's just beautiful, and I love teaching my young patients about what that symbolizes, and they love to learn it. They don't know any of that history.
Right.
It's a rich history that's represented in that Gateway project.
It is a rich history, and we have to make sure we protect that history. Absolutely. On the economic front, small business plan grants. This is, I mentioned the Goalpost just as an example, is a wonderful place to eat there. Reentry program for nonviolent inmates. The reentry is something I'm passionate about and have done a lot of work for in the past. Rehab houses, we've been doing that for a long time. We had several years ago. I'm just mentioning some things. A lead-based hazard control program, which helped make our community more safer there and put people to work. We've had down payment assistance for homes for low-income residents. Project Equal, just one of example of one of the grants. This particular one, I think, was $130,000 and was a cooperation between the police department and the schools targeted at-risk youth.
Right.
Project Success, school dropout. That's another partnership. Most all of these are partnerships. The PAL program is, a lot of people know about that. We've had gang suppression programs. We did some crime-free rental housing workshops there for a while. We've partnered the PAL program with the BMX to make that available to the kids. There's a lot that we've done, but we can't just rest. I mean, we really do have to keep working, and the message that we have to preach all across the city is that it's the old proverbial notion that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And if any of our neighborhoods are troubled, we have to keep working there, because it is in the interest of people living on the other side of the city, for the whole city to thrive. It really, really is.
And for those people who live in those neighborhoods, more than it magnifies and magnifies and magnifies. You know, there are 2 census tracts over there, and not far at all from that Gateway project, in which the lung cancer rate is 400% higher than it is in the city as a whole. We owe something to the good people and their children, and those who think that these neighborhoods don't have good people in them are wrong.
Oh, yes.
They do, and the good people want to take their neighborhoods back. You've talked a lot about transparency in government, Calvin. What does that mean?
Well, I'm going to give you a specific example. this council voted themselves a last-minute pay raise without airing before the public, without transparency.
Right.
We had a months-long budget process, no mention of a pay raise, and then in the last meeting, after all the public hearings had been held, a majority of the council voted a pay raise. Now, maybe a pay raise is needed, but you don't do it that way, and on principle, I voted against it. And to date, I've not taken that pay raise. In my 6 years on the council, I have not seen people as outraged in an acute way as on this issue. People didn't like it for good reason, and I didn't either. That's just an example. There were budget subcommittees that were held that I think the whole council should have been involved in, and they should have been in front of the camera rather than in conference rooms. There are a number of examples, but I look forward. I want to be positive. I look forward to being a part of a council that restores transparency to City Hall. Public service is really satisfying when you're getting the input from the people and they know what's going on, and people want to know what's going on when it impacts them in their pocketbooks. And they want their elected officials to do their business in the open, and I look forward to doing that. That's very pleasurable.
Thank you. Do you think, Calvin, that there's concern about civility in government?
Well, I do, and the examples are out there. People watch the council meetings, and I'm not going to, lay out a long list, but I do think that people are concerned about that. I do think that people want a face on their government that they can be proud of. This is a wonderful city with good, decent people, and the citizens of this city deserve a face that is worthy of how wonderful they are, and deserves a face that has substance and integrity and civility. And so I want to work with others, and I'm ready to do that, to give our city a public face that citizens can be proud of.
I've believed for a long time, as we've probably talked about in the past, that almost any problem can be solved if people are willing to be civilized and to sit down and talk and to listen to one another. By gosh, the manners that my mother and my father's mother, who lived with us, taught me have come in handy. These are fundamental things that allow people to not let their emotions get in the way of doing what may be the right thing, or struggling to decide what is the right thing to do. I have been concerned, and I understand that you are, about the loss of so many high-level staff members. We have a wonderful city manager, but I thought the loss of Wayne Byers at the time was a terrible loss.
And
just one example.
Yeah, and nothing I'm going to say is a reflection on the current city manager. I love working with her.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
And we're glad to have her. But these are developments that unfolded last year, and this has been very painful and very troubling to me. There's no question. And what you're referring to is the departure of our city manager, our assistant city manager, our public works director, police chief, fire chief, and others in the months following the last election. This relates, I was preaching for a long time about the...
You do like to preach now,
the council manager form of government, where the council members should set policy as a council and then hire a manager to carry it out, not micromanage that manager, and certainly not bypass the manager, go down to department heads and start telling them what to do. I was concerned about that, and I am, the new city manager estimated that the cost for the turnover of just 3 of these high-level positions the actual cost was $161,000. That's a big problem, not only in actual cost, but in untold indirect costs that you don't even count. And I stopped counting after 3 how much it was costing, because the point has been made. I am very concerned, was very concerned about this and the disruption that it's caused in our staff.
Stability is really important, isn't it? At my house, we wring our hands a good bit over the issue of crime in this city. it's always a concern. What are your thoughts about it?
If we don't have a safe city and a sound fiscal house, then a lot of your other programs get derailed. The rate of major crimes increased slightly last year in 2012, reversing 2 years of double-digit declines. In 2010, double-digit decline. 2011, double-digit decline. Last year, it basically leveled off, tipped up just a bit. Now, the causes of crime and the solutions to crime are complicated. They're not all to be laid at the feet of the city council or the school board or the sheriff's department or the police department. They're complicated. But I am concerned about that trend, and I think we have to work hard to get that trend back in the right direction as much as the city council can.
I agree. I think almost everybody agrees with that one. It's tough work. Police chief's got a lot on his plate. He's a wonderful chief, I believe. But I think the kinds of economic things that we're doing have as much importance in reducing this as anything that we do. You have at the end of your newsletter a statement of your vision for Greenville. It's for many people, it's inspiring to read, and I think we've got time. Will you read that, if you will?
Okay, I'll read it. I have a vision of Greenville as a vibrant business, educational, health, retirement, and cultural leader in North Carolina. A powerful economic center with many biotech, green, ecotourism, and other industries. A beautiful, walkable, bikeable, inclusive, fiscally sound, safe city with a dynamic uptown. A city famous for its towering oak trees and flowered parks and clean air and healthy citizens who know their neighbors. And a community of well-informed, participating, and happy citizens who can be proud of civil, trustworthy, responsive leaders. And I do believe, Tom, that a beautiful city serving our region does not just happen. It takes work, and we must all act today to make sure our city is a place where we and our children and our grandchildren will enjoy living, working, and serving. That's kind of the vision that wakes me up as I go to work on this public service side of my life. And I would say this to the audience: if you want to help achieve this vision or your version of this vision, there are many ways to help, but I'll end, as we're ending, with a very specific thing. Go to your email contact and pull up the people that you have communication with and write a heartfelt, personal note about your concerns and the importance of putting into office people who can reflect your vision for your city. Including
Actually showing up to vote.
Right.
Caring enough to do that as well. Calvin, thank you, and thank you for your public service. I know increasing numbers of citizens are working for a city of excellence, and I think you and candidates who reflect these views will do well.
Thank you, Tom. It's been one of my highest honors in my life to be entrusted with the citizens of Greenville, this position. If I may use this term, and I do for myself, I consider it a sacred trust that I have been given. I am running citywide. That's risky, and if the citizens choose to entrust me with this job again, I will do my level best to serve well. I appreciate your support, Tom, and your interviewing, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.